Okay, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this July 29th, 2016 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony, and you're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. You can catch my show every evening from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's Pacific time on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. They also play the show at 11 a.m. And if you can't listen to those, and why not? Why not just go listen to them? It's not hard. You just go on First Amendment Radio, hit the player button, and there I am, magically. But anyway, if you can't do that, go to my long-standing website at arcticbeacon.com. People ask, why do you spell it, Greg? Well, you know what I found out? Many people spell Arctic, A-R-T-I-C. And so I would have to buy another domain name, and I refuse to. So I'm just going to tell you how to spell it correctly, and it's arcticbeacon.com, where you can get shows going back, 10 years, how time flies, regarding one subject dear to my heart, the Vatican-led New World Order and all its tentacles spreading out throughout the world. Today on my show, I have Debra Ondrisek. She's here for a return visit, and I'm going to get to Debra. She's from the Alamo ministry, and if you listen to my show last week, I did a 5-part series, and basically to get more information out, to put something together so that people can send it all over, so that we can maybe get Tony out of jail. He's been there since 2008. He'll be 82 years old in September, and he's there for crimes he didn't commit. And we'll get into that with Debra. But I have a few things to get off my desk here. And I want to mention that on Monday, I will have Leo Zagami from Italy again on. And we're going to discuss the real story behind the coup in Turkey and how it really does affect America. And please go to that show, because we're talking about things we talked about 8 years ago about the man that the United States is keeping in Pennsylvania. His name is Fethullah Gulen. He's protected by us. And the leader of Turkey, Erdogan, wants him back. Wants us to release him, and he said, well, maybe then we can normalize relations. It's a really incredible story how I knew about the Gulen movement when this was going on 8 years ago, and basically the United States portrays him as a moderate Muslim, when in fact his movement is not moderate. He's a caliphate. He's a member of the caliphate, but he's not one of these guys going around wielding knives. He does it intellectually. And he's protected by us. So they have the story upside down, as usual. We'll get into that Monday. Another story you got to know about, and I'm going to do a story on this next week. I've traced some, I've lived in Italy for a year, so it's dear to my heart. I've traced really the illegal immigration, what's going on in Italy. It's an incredible story. Literally, hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants from Syria are just flooding into that country. And the people I talk to say it's changing the landscape of Italy. And if you want to see what they're doing there, what the government, backed by, of course, America, is allowing to happen to the people there, it's incredible. And it's going to happen here. So let's do that. All right. People have asked me, Greg, every 4 years you do a show on the presidential elections from your standpoint. Yes, I do. And I'm bringing that to you next week in an expanded version of maybe 3 shows. And you know my position on that. It is what I call the best off-Broadway theater show that's ever been produced. And the main characters this year, of course, are Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Produced by the Vatican. Interesting story. You'll get my take on that next week. All right. If you listened to my show last week, I put together a 5-part series about Tony Alamo. And the reason I did it is that I'm just getting really upset that he's still sitting in jail. And I know he handles it well, and I talked to a lot of his people, but I wanted to bring back his voice, and I had to do it through playing some of my old shows. And then I presented a pretty good case legally that this is a travesty of justice like I've never seen before. And so please go to those 5 shows, and let's see if we can drum up some interest and get a man that doesn't deserve to be in jail out. And the reason he's there is because he told me once, Greg, 99% of the truth isn't good enough. And We don't do that here at this ministry. Now, if you go back to the Protestant reformers, back during the time of the Protestant Reformation, you're going to see there's stark similarities between them and this ministry. And you're going to understand that the Vatican persecution that went on then through the Jesuit order is going on today in the same manner, just different tactics. So, Debra Ondrisek, she's waiting patiently. I told her it would only be a 5-minute introduction, and I went over 26 seconds. So, I want to get to Debra. Debra, how are you? Are you there?
I'm doing fine. Yes.
Okay, good.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm glad you came on because I want you to, I know you listen to some of those shows, and I want you to point out some things I may have missed, some things you may want to add, and also if there's some things you want to correct that I said, please go right ahead, but I want to get your input, and I want people to hear it from basically someone that's known Tony for 40 years. Go ahead.
Well, I think that you've been doing a really good job in getting...
Go ahead.
Greg, there's a lot of feedback on...
Huh. Okay, we're back with Debra. We solved that little problem of some kind of feedback, but we got that solved. All these technical things these days. I think we'd be better off, Debra, with 2 cups and a string. But anyway, we left off. You're going to add some things on the shows I did about Tony, and I know you have a couple letters from people, so go right ahead.
Well, I think that you did a really good job on your shows about Tony this past week, the past 5 shows that you did. Mm-hmm. And I did have some things that I'd like to add. What it is I've got some letters that people have written in at various times. So I thought I'd go ahead and read those because they show how they feel about Tony and his being in prison. And this one is from Yak, British Columbia, and it's the Protestant Mission newsletter. And it starts out, Roman Catholicism put on a pretended face with John Paul II. To the world, he was a picture of a gentleman, and the Roman Catholic news media portrayed him as such. Even the Roman Catholic youth in America were in love with him. They attended his rock concerts, and they would have done battle for him immediately if he had suggested it. He didn't need them just yet, however. He had the Opus Dei and the Knights of Columbus at his beck and call, so he was just preparing them for the future. Now that Rome has a Nazi pope and the fascists control America through Rome, just what Hitler and Pope Pius XII worked hard toward, the persecution against Bible believers, Protestants of all denominations, are being attacked, slandered, burned alive. As in the case of Waco, they were an Adventist breakaway group. They burned the children whom they were pretending to protect, along with the mothers and fathers in what the media called compound, just as Tony Alamo Ministries, who has now been convicted on false, bogus charges of taking young women or girls across state lines for sexual purposes. The very same FBI and ATF groups that burned those at Waco gave gifts to the false witnesses to frame Tony Alamo. But as was the case with Waco, even Protestant Bible believers believed only what they heard from the Roman Catholic news media, never questioning what they even saw with their own eyes and saw them being burned alive. They said they had it coming. Horrific. That happened right here in North America, the home of the free. You better know this. It is Roman Catholicism that controls the news media. It's not the Jews. And Roman Catholicism has sworn to destroy Protestantism, Bible-believing Protestants. Are you just going to sit idly by, allowing the new Roman Catholic Inquisition to carry right on, helping Rome with your silent, apathetic indifference? What if Rome comes for your denomination next? It is a fact that they will target those they think of as a threat to them first. And that brings us back to Tony Alamo, whom the media is demonizing, and whom more Protestant defend, instead of remembering them that are in bonds as bound with them. We all know why Tony Alamo is in prison, and it's not about child abuse either. Some people challenge us saying, you don't personally know the man. That is true. But how we know people according to God's word is this. In Matthew 12:34-35, O generation of vipers, how can you, being evil, speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks. A good man out of the good treasure of the heart brings forth good things, and an evil man out of the evil treasure brings forth evil things. Now, as is well known, the Tony Alamo Ministries has for many years warned people against God's great enemy, Roman Catholicism. He has preached the gospel of Jesus Christ to many, many homeless people. He and his first wife, Susan, took drug addicts and drunks off the streets and sheltered and fed them and gave the bread of life and paid for all their daily needs. They, in turn, helped Tony spread the gospel literature far and wide and sent the gospel into many foreign countries, and all without charge to anyone. I personally know that he has helped people that really needed financial help, and that is the way I would say that we do know Tony Alamo, by his literature, by the testimonies of many people, by his taped messages. Out of the abundance of his heart, he spoke the gospel, not evil trash such as we hear on TV or radio. Soon it will all be over, and God will do the judging. In the meantime, may he give us courage to stand for what is right and true and good. And let our fear be of God, not of man. In service for Jesus Christ, Harry and Tina Barrett.
Okay, before we go on to the next letter, why don't we talk about, what I said in one show was that a number of these girls who were coerced by the FBI had recanted what they said and were sorry that they lied. Give us your personal knowledge of some of these recantations by these girls.
Well, yes, that's what they did. I mean, I don't have their letters in front of me, but I do know that, yes, there were several of them that recanted what they said. And how could they not? Because if they ever had a moment of quietness in their hearts at night, when maybe God could deal with them, and they would review what they had done and what had happened to them, then that would bring some kind of conviction down upon them, where they would start speaking the truth about what happened. And yes, several of them have definitely recanted. And I actually have a letter from one of the 6 girls that was taken away in the 2008 raid. Now, this is not a recanting letter, but it's just a letter where she said after she had been taken away, it was in the first few months after the raid had happened where she was taken away, that she had written back. And she said that could you want me to read that to you now? I can.
Yeah, if you have it, go right ahead.
She's saying, "Hi, how are you? I hope I am not doing that good at all. It is so miserable and boring. I can't stand the school I'm in. I have made some friends, though. I miss you all so, so, so much. Almost every night, I have nightmares about me being kidnapped by all of these people, and I also have nightmares about the raid at the church. I didn't know that you were at the court when I was there. I wish I could have seen you. Your letters were very encouraging. Thank you so, so, so much. So were Mrs. Thorne's. I miss everybody so much. I want to come home more than anything. It's so weird out here. If anybody thinks that it is fun out here, they're insane. In the school that I'm going to, almost everybody does drugs, even the 7th graders. That's insane. Thank you for everything and your prayers, too. I will be praying for you all, too. Tell Vicki I said thank you so much for the cookies and everything. They were so good."
Yeah, it doesn't sound like
that was it.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like someone that's been mistreated.
No, they wanted to be back. All of those girls, all of the children that were taken wanted to be back in the ministries, and that wasn't going to happen. And they've actually turned these children totally against the ministries, against their parents, even against the pastor, even against the parents that brought them up that they loved so very much, and just totally had their minds and hearts switched another way.
I want to make sure I'm correct on this because I've said it a few times, and I want to get your verification. Now, I stated in the as the court record showed, and as the case was, as the raid was going down, there were 6 small children taken that day in Fauquier, Arkansas, And then few days later, there was a all-points bulletin put out by the judge to round up any child in the ministries all over the country, right? And that amounted to what, 30 to 35 children? Is that correct?
Altogether, okay, the first day was September 20th, 2008, and the 6 girls were taken. And then the second, that was the first grade. And then in November 18th, which was about 2 months later, almost to the day, Judge Griffin had ruled that they could take all the Alamo children from all of our churches anywhere. And that's
now,
an
interesting question I never asked anybody that just came to mind is, between those 2 months and after the first 6 children were taken, did the judge have any reason to do that because child abuse charges were found by him? What's the story on that?
Well, none of those children, none of the 6 girls that were taken were found to have any kind of child abuse, and actually all their videos were posted on YouTube, and they may or may not still be there. We do have copies of those, but they all stated none of them were abused, and they were all happy to be in the ministry, and they all wanted to be back in the ministry, and it was a terrible disruption in their lives and in their families and everything that they were doing at the time. And that's
Absolutely.
As far as the judge, they never found any abuse whatsoever. The only thing that anybody only real reason they had was
I wanted to
because
get
they didn't have the vaccinations.
Okay, so let me get this perfectly straight since you were there. These 6 girls, there was no abuse ever found. So what justification did he use to try to get the other girls into custody?
All the other children?
Yeah, what was his reasoning? I mean, if there's no abuse found, what was his reasoning outside of maybe just, I want to kidnap these kids? What was his reasoning given to you?
The only thing that I can say, without looking back at it, because it's been almost 8 years now, the only thing I can remember about it is that because we weren't going to leave the ministries to get our children, these 6 girls, back, and we were visiting with them, and one of the girls had already been convinced that she wanted to be, by Tanya Griffin, that she wanted to be disassociated with her dad, whom she loved with all of her heart, and they had already started the process of trying to get these children turned against their parents and to use their testimony against our pastor, is what it was. And so they just decided that they would take everybody because we weren't going along with the government program for our children. And
exactly. I mean, that's basically an infringement of your constitutional rights, I would think. If you really think about it, no abuse charges found.
I'm sorry.
No, I said it's a blatant violation of your constitutional rights, and they just trampled all over you guys. Correct?
Yes, and our children weren't in public schools. They wanted our children to be in public schools. They wanted them vaccinated, supposedly. But the real reason that they took our children is because they saw in taking them that they could, to me, they could see what they're doing right now, which is to turn these children against their parents by the bribery and the things that they were doing, and taking them to the Rivendell over there in Benton, Arkansas, and to these different programming stations, which, under the guise of psychiatry or psychology, and to get them to recant their beliefs, their Bible beliefs, and to turn totally against their parents when they had loved their parents. But this way they could use them to bring more lawsuits against the ministry, which is evidently what their plan was, because this is what's happened. Over and over again, there's been lawsuits by children that have been taken out of the ministry, and there's one pending right now. And that's what their plan is, to destroy the ministry, not just to put Tony in prison, but to completely annihilate the ministry, so there's no more word going out about what the Vatican is doing, the Vatican one world government. And we were trumpeting it loudly, everything that they were doing. It's been going going on for years. It's been going on for years and years and years. We've been telling people about the Vatican and about what's going on. And besides, the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ and our ministry has been very, very effective. We've been well trained by our pastor. And as a matter of fact, the Bible says that we're in a spiritual warfare, that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers and spiritual wickedness in high places, and that but the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but they're mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. And the weapon is the Bible. That's our only weapon. That's the same weapon that Jesus used in his temptation in the wilderness. He quoted scriptures when the tempter came to him. And we want to let people know that, yeah, there is a God and there is a Satan and an army of demons that are constantly, and the nature of these demons is to kill, to murder, to destroy, to lie. He's a thief and a liar, and he uses slander, and that's exactly what he's done against our pastor and in this ministry for all these many multitudes of years. And this is this second time that Tony's actually had to spend time in prison. This first it was 4 years, and then 2 years in a halfway house, and now it's he's got a 175-year prison sentence for crimes that he didn't commit. And there's no such thing as this taking the girls across state lines for sex. That's one of the greatest lies I've ever heard of. It worked. I mean, it worked for them, and it's a good thing if you want to put someone in prison.
Well, I think I pointed that out in one of my shows when I talked about the Mann Act, which they used against him. And what that is an archaic law that was passed in 1910, which basically has been used over the years to basically to stop political dissent. They used it in a number of cases regarding, for example, Charlie Chaplin. They didn't like his views, so they could use this archaic law to ensnare people into basically what they did here. Let me explain. Is they took these girls, coerced their testimony, and then basically used that law stating that if these girls were taken across for sexual purposes, that is a federal violation of the Mann Act. Now, one of the keys to this is the jury, I know, came out with a question to the judge and asked him when they were deliberating, can we convict this man even though there's no child abuse or sexual abuse ever found? And the judge refused to answer that. And the reason he did is if he would have said, no, you can't, he would have Tony to walk free. But what he did is he said, just follow my instructions. And that was kind of a silence and abstention, saying, you just go and convict him. Crazy. I mean, insane. How he was railroaded. And they use, if people look into the Mann Act, and I don't want to get into the technicalities, go back to my old show, you see they had to use this because there was no sexual abuse or ever any sex ever found on these trips or anywhere. Correct?
That's right.
Yeah, and I mean...
Absolutely right. There was never
right.
any sex found whatsoever.
And they had to use something like this. This act has been used sparingly. Do you know that they used this against Charles Manson in the 60s, but you know what? The charges were dropped.
That figures.
And Tony once said, they try to make me out to be Charles Manson. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think there's no better way to hit a story like this than to just tell the truth. And that's what we're trying to do, because the truth always prevails in the end. It's tough to get out sometimes when you're fighting this evil organization. But we're going to try again in the next half hour with Debra Ondrisek of the Alamo Ministry, back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
Okay, we're back on the Investigative Journal on this July 29th, 2016 day on our calendar. My guest is Debra Ondrisek of the Alamo Ministry. And during the break, it was quite interesting. Debra had expressed to me that when I asked her a couple questions about what occurred specifically back in 2008, that she was just confused a bit because so much confusion was going on back then that it was really hard to take everything in. And I think it brought back a bad memory. But Debra, tell me exactly what it was like during those days and what really they did to steal these kids. Go ahead.
Well, there was a lot of confusion. We were in and out of court, and there were different reasons that we had to go to court. There was the probable cause, and then there was just the different hearings that we had to go to, and then when the video was leaked, then there was another one, and then there was this one and that one, and then the parents had to go, the ones that were getting their rights terminated, and there was so much, and there was
plus you got this raid going on.
Working on this case,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
I said plus the raid goes on. The kids are taken. You're being going back and forth to court. It was hard to keep everything together, right?
Yes, and also when we'd go to court, we'd have there would be different members of the media that would mock us, and they were going to write whatever they wanted to write. They weren't going to write the truth. They had no interest. To them, we were just a bunch of weak Christians that they could just walk all over and just do whatever they were told to do against us, and that's what they did. But I do remember that when we were in the courtroom, the second time, which was November 20th, 2008, and Judge Joe Griffin had just ruled that they were going to take that anybody, they could seize all the Foundation children, no matter where they were. And what they did was then they had the police standing in front of the doors of the courtroom, and we were not allowed to leave. We could not leave for any reason whatsoever, to use the restroom or for whatever reason. And we were just in there. And in the meantime, what had happened, we had about 30 people from our ministries that were in the courtroom, and they were there to be witnesses against the accusations they were bringing against our pastor and against the parents, so we could get our children back. And they had us all locked in there. And then the judge had already dismissed us, but we couldn't go because they wouldn't let us go. And we were all in there waiting while they went, and they got out on the highway, and they seized our children. They seized one of the groups right off the highway. There were a couple of them there in vehicles, and they took our children. And it was a terrible, terrible time, because there was so much going on and hitting us from every angle. And we were just Christians, law-abiding people, and this is what was going on. It was just like such a nightmare, such a horrible time, and for no reason whatsoever to take our children, no abuse whatsoever. And well, that's basically what happened that one particular day.
You know, it's an incredible story, and there's much, much more. Please go back to that 5-part series I did, and in fact, go back a number of years. I got all my shows on my website kept so that people can go back and see how this story unfolded, because I was aware of this. I was interviewing and trying to get to the bottom of this story years before this occurred, because of the fact that I was curious to find people who understood what Rome was all about, because I'd lived and worked there. And that's how I got on the story myself. But anyway, Debra, I know you have another letter you want to read in support of Tony. And let me emphasize again, if anybody has any ideas or can help in any way to help free this man, you can email me at gregbeacon, BEACON.com, or you can go to alamoministries.com, their website, and read up on it yourself. Get their side of the story before you convict anybody. I thought that's what this justice system and what America's all about. But that's a naive look once you get to know the inside story. Debra, go ahead with that letter.
Okay, this is another letter from the Protestant Mission newsletter. And it says, I remember the first time John Paul came to Canada. The ones who were concerned and came from the USA to protest and hand out literature to enlighten the blinded were a group from the Tony Alamo Ministries. They came, they distributed tracts and talked to people, but the very day John Paul came, the whole group of young people were put in jail. No charges were laid, no reasons given. They were not allowed to take their Bibles with them and were rudely treated. They were kept in prison until the day that Antichrist left Canada. Then they were released without explanation or apology. This information came from a very credible source. I know also that it is because of the distribution of literature exposing Roman Catholicism as enemies of righteousness that is the real reason that Tony Alamo is in jail once again. Do you think the government in the USA, or anywhere else for that matter, cares anything about the welfare of children? False charges they have brought against Tony Alamo of making kiddie porn or molesting young girls, etc. According to all the witnesses who have testified, young girls 15 or 16 years of age have told their side of the story that these charges are false. So the authorities are trying to set up false witnesses who have been asked by Tony to leave the ministry, people who were bad examples and not staying true to the gospel. These are the ones who, being bitter, come and accuse Tony Alamo falsely. But we have to ask ourselves this: if the authorities had so much regard about children being molested, physically and sexually abused, how come they do not shut every Roman Catholic institution down, since it's a proven fact that children by the thousands are, and always have been, sexually and physically molested, tormented, and even put to death by the celibate priest of Baal? How often do you hear or read about a priest who has been charged by one of their victims of sexual rape and abuse, expecting justice, only to find that this pervert has been moved to another place secretly so he can just carry on with the abuse? any justice there? How come the Roman Catholic parents who already know about all the children being molested by their priests just keep on sending their children to these sexually perverted pedophiles? Where is their natural affection? Is that not neglect? After all, they already know and can read about pedophilia in the newspapers nearly every single day. So why are the authorities not concerned about this huge ring of sexual abuse of children? Talk about double standards. One rule for Rome, another for the rest of the world. And that's that on that letter.
Yeah, that was really good, and I'm glad you read that because, we talk about that double standard. It's amazing to me. I mean, how many schools? I mean, I went to a Catholic grade school. Now, if there was ever, I know there's a number of grade schools in this country where priests have been found to be pedophiles. Why haven't they taken those children? Why haven't they closed those schools down? It's an amazing double standard, but let's look at it from one point of view here. And I mentioned this name before, a guy by the name of Fethullah Gulen. And if you don't think the Obama administration and the people pulling the strings behind our government for years are fomenting radical Islamic terror in this country, and you don't think there's an attack on Christianity, I recommend you look at what's going on in Nigeria right now, where millions of Christians are being rounded up and killed. And then let's make it really specific here, and I want to ask a question, and maybe somebody out there in the State Department or anywhere can answer me. Why are you hiding and protecting a man by the name of Fethullah Gulen, who is basically an Islamic radical? You're protecting him, giving him asylum in Pennsylvania. Why are you doing that? And in the same time, why have you put a pastor who has not done anything, a Christian pastor, in jail for the rest of his life? It doesn't make sense to me. Somebody please explain it. I think that's a good example, isn't it?
Yes.
And go ahead.
Greg, Roman Catholicism is the ones who even started the Islamic religion. We know that, and Alberto Rivera had much to say about that. But that was started by them, and then what they do is they use Islam to try to get people to go in and have these wars to get these people to do their bidding is what it's all about. Islam and Catholicism really are basically the same thing. They're controlled by the same people at the top. Let's put it.
Yeah, and I mean, let me just give, and I'm not afraid to tackle this question head on. I know there's a lot of good Muslim people in this world, and there's a lot of good Catholic people that have no idea what's going on. But let me ask a good Muslim, this question. Now, if I said to you, why don't you go take a visit to Iran, or why don't you go to Libya right now? Why don't you go live in Syria? That's where your religion is. What do you think would happen to you? They'd cut your head off. Now I ask you the same question. If you want to go to a Christian country, you'd be welcomed. No one's going to hurt you. So why are Christians being killed? I mean, this double standard, and we have these Muslims who are in this country right now, and I have nothing against them, but they really don't understand that Christians are really trying to help them. It's the Vatican who's creating this chaos. That's killing you. That's killing your brethren. And they've created this terrorism. And I wish people could see the difference, that they're painting Christians in this country out to be fanatics, and they're not giving even the Muslims that are here in good faith an understanding of it. And they're being brainwashed to help create this chaos. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. They do. The Vatican uses the Muslims, the Islamic religion, to do what they're doing right now. I mean, I was never aware that there were so many Muslims in this country until recently. And the Vatican uses our military, our Navy and Army and Marines to go over into these other countries and subjugate them, because the Vatican controls everything that goes on here. They're the ones who created the United Nations. they're the ones in charge of the United Nations. The Vatican is controlled by Satan. It's a satanic spiritual thing that's going on here, and they want to. Ultimately, what they want is what Satan wants is to be worshipped by everybody in the world, and that's what he's going after. He even tried to get the Lord Jesus Christ to worship him, and the Lord absolutely used the Word of God on him, and that's what we do. We just quote the Word of God when Satan comes at us with these things. But yes, it is a spiritual thing that's going on here, and yes, the Vatican is using our government. He's using Islam, the Muslims, to do his dirty work over in these other countries too, to go in there and subjugate them.
Yeah, and just an aside here, and I think you might find this interesting, going back to John Peeler, the FBI agent who really wanted to testify on behalf of Tony, saying the government had put him up to trying to frame Tony, which with that testimony, he'd have been released on the spot. He wasn't allowed to testify. But in 2007, I remember talking to John, and Tony, prior to that, had mentioned that Bill Clinton, because you guys were in Arkansas, were really behind a lot of the attacks. They wanted to basically get rid of Tony for his views on the Vatican, and knowing Bill Clinton's connection through the schools he went through his Jesuit mentors, it made sense to me. Now, guess what Peeler told me in 2007? This is long before Hillary Clinton now is probably ordained as the next president. He said when he knew Clinton, they would sit in back rooms and talk, and Clinton told him that he was, of course, the president, going to be the president. This was prior to him being the president. He said, my wife will then be the president, and then I'm going to be the head of the UN when the one world government comes in. And he said Bill had a few drinks or something, but that's what Clinton told him years ago. Incredible,
yes, I remember hearing that last week on one of the tapes you played, and it was great. I was really amazed to hear that, but I believe it, and that's where it's headed right now. I mean, that's, to me, incredible.
Yeah, and of course they always say it's a lie, and then they disavow that Peeler ever worked there, just like they disavowed that Alberto Rivera was even a Jesuit priest. It's all a bunch of lies, and man, I've had to deal with that as well. I mean, you have to really break through this and show people facts. And to make it real simple, just being a kind of a, well, put it this way, when I found out this story, I didn't realize how deeply it went, how deeply the Vatican was involved in everything. And I remember in the beginning stages here in America, and may I say this, it's much easier to get this story out in Italy or in Europe. They'll talk about it. There's places actually that will sit down, people that will actually look at you and go, hey, you're right. I know what they're all about. But here in this country, we've been so kept away from all these things that most people consider anybody that talks like me to be a fanatic, to be crazy, a conspiracy theorist, etc. And all I ever said back when I was trying to debate these people, I even mentioned it to Ron Paul's assistant, who I said I would like to have on my show. And I said I'd like to get, and then they said, well, you have to tell us exactly what questions. I said, sure. I want to know his position on the Vatican and a number of different things. And guess what? At that point, he was going on all these shows that were near mine, like Alex Jones and other guys. He was basically hitting the internet because he was kind of a renegade candidate. He displayed him as that. Well, he would not come on my show. And I surmise the reason was he was working for the Vatican. And I believe that to this day. And there's a lot of these guys in the government that do that. Now, the point I always made to these people was, look, I just want a fair shake on this story. I don't want people, I'm not coming out, I have facts. I want to put my story next to yours and let the people decide. But you cannot get this story into a fair debate in the media, whether it be the alternative media, the top guys that are controlling it, or the mainstream. And to me, that shows perfectly the truth lies right there. Don't you agree?
Yes, for sure. They're not going to let anybody get the truth out. The media is controlled by the Vatican totally, so And that's another thing too, because you said that over in Italy they'll hear the story, they'll agree with you, and they'll receive it. Here, people, I think they're so oversaturated with a million different TV stations and rock music and anything that on these movies, and it's all a big brainwash, and their brains are just so, they don't even, I mean, if you try to tell them this sort of thing, yeah, they do. They think you're crazy, or you're from some foreign country, or something, you're from some alien place, because it's so alien to them. They have no idea what really is going on, and that's what the plan was from the beginning, and that's how it is. That's what the Vatican's, everything is falling into place the way they want it, but they forget about God.
Yeah, and tell us, we have maybe, let's see here, 6 minutes. I think people would like to know what's going on now in the ministry, how you guys have reacted to this. I know you're getting out a lot of information still, how Tony's doing, a little bit of an update for people who may realize that you guys are as strong as ever.
Yes, we have different places where people can go to our services out in the Los Angeles area, New York, and different places. And we send out teams of witnessing people to go out and distribute the literature in different cities. When we go to the presidential rallies and gathering places where there's going to be a lot of people, and we get a lot of really, really good responses, and people are really interested, very much interested in what we're doing. And of course, this story with Tony, of course, he's been in prison now for, it's almost 8 years now, and on top of the 4 years that they had him in prison before, so really it's been 12 years and then 2 months in the halfway house, and but we're still on top of everything because we're still preaching the gospel. They have not got it to where we cannot get the word out, and we're still getting it out. We're still letting the world know what the Vatican's doing, and we're not going to stop doing that. And people are still getting saved. We're still sending tons of literature over to different foreign countries, and they're evangelizing over there, and many people are getting saved. And I'll tell you what, people used to say, oh, Africa, all the people over there in the jungles, but you know what? It's such a great missionary field over there, and there's so many people that love God over there that just are so eager to get the gospel out, and we provide them with the tools to do that. So, and then in India and the Philippines, and over in Indonesia and Thailand, and there's different people all over that we send literature to, even in Germany and over in England and just everywhere. And the gospel is being preached, and there's other people that are preaching the gospel too, and we're not going to stop. And it doesn't matter what Satan does, because really he's a liar. He's just a bluff. All he can really do is deceive, and he's done that well. Yeah, people are deceived. And what are they going to do when they stand before the judgment bar of God? Say, oh, we were deceived? I mean, people are going to be accountable for what they do when they hear the gospel and what they do as far as helping people get out of prison. The Lord says, he clearly says in Matthew 25, to visit the people, to help the people that need food and clothing and shelter, and to feed people that are hungry, and to visit the people that are in prison, and to let people know people should get with us and get behind us and help us to get our pastor out of prison, and to let people know what the Vatican is doing, to expose the Vatican to every bit of information that they have, to get it out there and let them know, because it's for their very lives and their very souls and for their families. To get this information out would be the best thing people can do.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to emphasize is that I don't subscribe to I've talked to people about the subject. Well, how did you get to this point of understanding all this? And are you sure there's a lot of facts behind it? And I says, yes. And I said, it's not really that hard. I said, the first thing you have to do, it's all up to you, not anyone else. The information is there, although they've destroyed much more information that could be there, but there's still enough around that people can really see what we're talking about is factually true. And all it takes is a little bit of inquisitiveness on your part. Now, if I can do it, and I say this very honestly, I went through the Catholic religion. I mean, I went through high school. I went through grade school. I mean, but I was lucky enough to happen to live in Rome, and I didn't know anything when I got there. And it took me a while, but once you see it, once you experience it, and you have the drive to just ask questions, just to meet people, just to talk, you will see that you can come from the biggest atheist like I was and really find that what you guys are saying and getting closer to God is not that difficult. You just have to open up your mind and your heart to this. And it's really the best thing that'll ever happen to you. You may have a few, you may not be, for example, I don't think I could ever get hired as a journalist, my profession that I love, in a mainstream paper. And not that I would want to, but the point is that you may have to go through those kind of experiences where you're ostracized a bit. But that's the way it always is meant to be. When people really search for the truth, they find it's a very limited, there's a very small minority of people who get it, right? We got about 40 seconds. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's true. But you can't stop. You have to just keep on looking for the truth, and the truth is Jesus Christ. And if people just open up their Bibles, they would find him there, and they would find the peace and joy and happiness. And that's what our ministry does, is let people know how they can get to the Lord Jesus Christ. That's the main thing, and that's why we're so persecuted.
Yeah, well, listen, just keep it up. And thanks for all the time you spent here today. It's really a good show. It'll be playing, yes, boy, I want to have you on again is what I'm saying. So, but let's keep in touch in the next couple of weeks, and hopefully take Debra's advice and go to their website, alamoministries.com. And if anybody out there can lend assistance to try to get Tony out of jail, at least look at the facts. I know the ministry would appreciate it greatly. Debra, thanks a lot. See you again.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll see you tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy, in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.